YouTube, it's your boy Dustin here, back with another video. It's so good to be back. Wondering what y'all have been up to, and take the sunglasses off here for this one. Wondering what is going on in all of your lives, and hopefully y'all are staying positive out there. I couldn't help but wake up this morning and think of all the incredible days I've had in my life so far, and how grateful I am, how thankful I am. And, you know, I've been on the side of it too, the side of negativity. But I still can't wrap my head around the fact that we live in a world filled with such negativity, and just being positive is going to help us get through all these days. We got to treat every day essentially like it's the best one. It's the best one of our lives, and I think that's the goal. I think that's what it's all about at the end of the day. If we can figure out how to put the ingredients together in that recipe, and solve what it's going to take for us to get there, I think we're going to be okay. So I don't have the answers, to each and every one of you getting to that point, but I know for me, the biggest thing is I just have to remain positive and know that, you know, I'm going to be taken care of. There's always a higher power. There's always God, who the higher power, who is taking care of us. And we got to just remain strong, even if we're going through the ups and downs. It's part of the process, and it's part of who we need to become. Now, for me personally, that's just, I have to put myself in a situation every day on a daily basis, day in, day out, where I'm choosing to have an optimistic and positive mindset no matter what's going on around me. And that's difficult. It's not easy to do. But if you're not going to be constantly stressing, if you're not going to be worried about, you know, 100 million things on a daily basis, then you're going to be okay. You just have to trust that things are going to be okay. I just ran into a video, and I could only think of negative things to say about it. But, it was a video with Piers Morgan, and not a big fan of the guy. I had some negative things to say about it, and ended up taking down the post online about it. But, because we try to stay positive and remain positive. So, honestly, it was just a post about, he was interviewing Tate, and Tate was like, look, you know, I trust God to put food on the table and this and that. And Pierce was like, well, you don't work, you don't have a job. Like, how do you, he was like, God doesn't put food on your table. You honestly have to do that yourself. And he's like, well, how do you survive then? If God's putting food on your table, how do you work? How do you put food on the table? You can't rely on God. He's not doing that for you. And he basically had to explain to Pierce, he's like, yes, he's like, faith comes first. Your faith, your religion overall comes first. That faith that you have, by faith, not by sight, that comes first above any of that. And I understood like where Pierce was coming from, in the sense that, yeah, God doesn't like log online and direct onto your banking and take the money out of your bank for you, and physically like hand the bills to the debt collectors or whoever, for you to pay bills. But, he meant across the board. He didn't just mean that. So I understand that sense, and only to that extent. But Pierce was completely shut off to the idea that there's any help from God, that God puts food on the table. And he does. He owns all our resources. He owns all the resources, on this earth. If we were to mine all the resources and gather all the resources of the earth, they ultimately come from God still. Now, that's a beautiful thing, but he also gives us the ability to use our hands for his work. And I think that's phenomenal. And as far as word of mouth, he gives us the ability to, and, and asks us to share his word and spread his word and help others the best we can through all of those things, through our actions, through all that. But we are able to put our hands to work and, serve the kingdom and the glory of God. So I think that's great. But, you know, I'm not going to give you all the whole, religion spiel today, but this is just like my faith. And I just wanted to talk to y'all and remain positive. And I hope I can speak to you all and into your lives, and help you all. But we talk about a lot of things on this channel. And that was the one thing I saw that video yesterday. I was just like, what a closed mindset. So and it's not just the religious aspect of it. So it ties into everything. So if Pierce or whoever, or you or me, or whoever is going to continue to have a negative mindset or closed off mindset of negativity, whether it's there's no higher power, there's no help for me, I can't get through this difficult time, you know, for me, it was actually the physical things in front of me, whether it was like financial, money, whether it was, getting through the day, a tough event that happened, a tough day at the job, a tough day on my day off, something happened where it was like, one of my days off, it was like, man, or over the weekend or whatever, it just threw me off track. And I was letting that control my life. But the point here is to try and remain positive. And it's going to be hard to do because there's a lot of difficult times ahead of us. And, we just have to remain positive. I watched this is another stupid example, but, like I said, we talk about all kinds of things on this channel. I have all kinds of interests, whether it's music, hobbies, all of that. Been through a lot of different phases, and I go in and out, my mind wanders. I've been a different person, different people at different points in my life, and I've changed. So ultimately, I was also watching a secondary video on yesterday. So Bobbi Althoff, she does this podcast or whatever, and she was interviewing Drake. She had initially interviewed him. They had a huge fallout. There was all kinds of drama involved, negativity. Both parties got involved, and it wasn't the best foot for them to start off on after the interview. And you could just tell, I think kind of like the weakness on both ends was Drake really wasn't susceptible to picking up on something somebody else was going through in their life, like Bobbi. And Bobbi wasn't particularly a nice person in the sense that she had to do a better job at being kind, in order to receive that kindness back, potentially. Maybe if she would have put a kind foot forward first. Now, I'm thinking back then, I'm not thinking now, because she's changed a lot. And I do see a change there. And Drake was talking about it. Respect is everything. They all had great things to say. As far as where they're at now, this is where it gets cool for me. So they're coming from these two different spectrums, right, of things they've got going on or things they interpret. They're two different people. They're going to interpret things differently. But ultimately, they ended up coming together and saying, and this is all going to tie into what I was talking about, but they were coming together and saying, look, we're just like above all these jealous companies. Drake was saying above all these jealous companies that could have interviewed me. They're DMing me, they're emailing me, and they're in the media. They're saying, oh, well, Drake has time to talk to this girl Bobby, but he does not have time to talk to us. This is a joke. He had one of his team members like, why are you doing this again? Y'all had a falling out. And so they had that disconnection, right? Drake and Bobby did. And here they are coming together to try and figure out their differences. I see Trump do it a lot. He tries to work very hard to make the relationships with other company or other countries a good one, a good relationship. And I think that's fantastic. If we can just work harder on our relationships, maybe things will work out. Sometimes they don't work out, and that's fine. But the whole point here is that going back to Drake and Bobby, Drake was saying, and Bobby agreed. He's like, look, aside from all this talk that was going on, we're here together now because we want to be friends. We want to be two normal people having a completely normal conversation. And you even think of popularity, like Drake's super popular, but Bobby's like, just starting out. Maybe he contributed to like a large portion of her success at that time because she hasn't been around forever like Drake has, in the media and the music industry. So, but I thought it was interesting because they both came together and they were like, look, we are just two completely normal people that want to have a good conversation, a normal conversation. And we want this to be a podcast. It doesn't have to be this big, huge thing with all these complicated questions. It doesn't have to be this big interview or whatever. So I thought that was a good point as well. It made me think of, okay, remaining positive, trying to, stay away from the popularity, stay away from the wrong idea, stay away from, okay, money is everything, and I was really thinking about it and I'm like, they had the right idea going back into that interview, that podcast. And I was like, look, it was cool to see it work out for them. I was like, good for them. So that's a small, silly example, but it just goes to show that, you know, the days of Hollywood they're over. It's not about red carpet days anymore. It's really behind us. It's about people being human. I mean, how many times have you seen guys like Matthew McConaughey talk about, life, just dropping gems on things he's been through, and guys like Kevin Hart, and there's just so many different other people out there that are dropping gems. And I had posted a video, reposted a video. I think it was on Facebook or something like that. That Solomoro had uploaded, and he had done an interview with this doctor that he knows, and Dr. Chimney. And she had a lot of wealth, a lot of success. She had a very nice home, very nice vehicles, all this. But she also had a beautiful family, beautiful children, supportive husband, strong marriage. And the key thing I took to heart in that video was what she had to say, the gems she had to drop. How was she someone who contributed to her own success? What were the things that contributed to her success? What were the people that she listened? Who were the people that she listened to along the way in her journey? What were the books she read? What was the knowledge that she wanted to pass on to her children? What makes her a good owner, CEO, business person, doctor? You know, what makes her a role model? And she had a lot of good things to say in that interview as well. So she had told Soul, who's got a lot going on for himself, she said, look, you know, you got a lot going on for you, but I think, you know, as big as the things you have going, as big as you are right now, I hope what you're doing and what you're doing it for is even bigger. I hope for that for you. And I thought that was great. And that's what I hope for you all on this journey we're on. You know, we talk about day in the life and this journey and all that. I hope that there's something great waiting for you on the other side of this journey, your path. I hope that there's something we can take away from keeping a positive mindset, remaining kind, having a good heart, working hard. I hope we can just find this middle ground now. You know, as difficult as things are in this world, in this time that we're going through, hope that we all can find it in us to make it and to come together and really share our stories, share our experiences, and pass on gems to other people. You know, I hope that you all will remain positive and will, whatever knowledge that you have, you will push forward and you will share it with those around you. Age, whether it's experience, whether it's who you are as a person and what you've been through, your story, share that with people.